This is the fourth reading this year of Joseph Conrad's The Secret Share. I read a bit online about it today. This book now is like an old friend to me. 4 times in a year. And I'm not talking about Heart of Darkness, though that is good, but it's a more youthful, inexperienced work. Heart of Darkness, I think, was written in 1893, The Secret Share in 1909, published in 1910 in Harper's Magazine. Still kicking crazy. Publish me, Harper's. I'm as good as any of your essayists. I think I've applied there a few times. Submitted stuff a few times. But literary journals, they might not like to hear it, but overall, they're kind of snobs and they're a little bit conservative in their tastes. Thinking such conservatism part of their gentility. I was the nonfiction editor at Blue Mesa Review for a bit. Well, one of 2 of them. So I speak with some knowledge. And my submittable rejections list is huge. I've got like a dozen acceptances, but the ratio still stings. As we discussed before, this is probably a cover by Milton Glaser. Someone says that on a Pinterest post that seems to know what they're talking about. I was like squinting at the back of album covers sometimes, like, it's the year! Okay, the story's copyright 1910, yeah. The introduction, 1950. I could have sworn the copy I have of this said something about the 60s. Or is this a 1950 paperback? If so, I have been treating it too roughly. I would bet it's the 60s one, though, and I think I've seen it dated that online. Anyway, in 1952, possibly because of the appearance of this paperback in the world, in 1950, there's a weird idea for a movie even, and it's called Face to Face. It was made, I was reading about this online today, and it's 2 kind of stories of doubles, I guess. I don't know. I haven't read this other story, so I don't know. But the other one is called The Bride Came to Yellow Jacket. Who wrote it? I want to say like Bret Hart or somebody like that. But the first half is The Secret Sharer adapted. So I'd like to see that. There is also a 1968 play, and you can buy a $15 copy online. I wouldn't mind seeing that to see how it's adapted. There's a 80s, possibly 70s, sci-fi novella called The Secret Sharer, and it's just basically this adapted for science fiction. It's Robert Silverberg, and it won all kinds of awards. And then I was really reading about this movie today, pretty much everything there was online. There's a 2014 movie adaptation of The Secret Share, and it looks like a 90s erotic romance or something, the way it is. The Secret Share, the double, is a woman in it, and the setting is a little different, and the workers on the boat are Chinese, and it seems different. But apparently, I reread the Wikipedia page for it today also. The Secret Share is one of Conrad's most analyzed stories, though people have thought it's second to The Shadow Line often. But this is apparently one of his most discussed, probably because it's often paired with Heart of Darkness, and Heart of Darkness is widely read. I'm telling you, world, Heart of Darkness and The Secret Share would be a great band name or album name. About all the double meanings. But, so I read this as part of the paperback project earlier this year. Andre Day. Paperback project again, reading all 190 paperbacks on this case over a few years. I'm close to 10 in. But I read it in January, February of this year, and then I thought, it was the very beginning of this year. I thought, it's crazy, some kids at the high school I work at were arrested for murder recently. It's a whole big deal. It's a citywide news story. One of them was a student I taught when I was a long-term English teacher. As a brother, I also know. The other one I, wrote late passes for all the time. Ugh, they're being tried as adults. They're going to probably go to prison for life. What a waste. Bad home lives, too, so the parents just kicked it down the road. You shed worse than squirrel. I got to brush you. Hope it likes it, man. She's attacking the brush. So, there's hair on this thing. Yeah, it's yours as well. Gross, don't make that a toy. What a cat. But I had skipped a month, but it was kind of nice returning to The Secret Sharer. I read it pretty quick in like 3 or 4 sittings. And, I still found passages where I was like, I never noticed that cool part before, that paragraph, that thing he's doing. Definitely, I'm going to write like a scholarly paper after I've read this 12 times in a year and a half. Can't always separate my notes between the readings, but I'm starting to get some distinct ideas about it. He wrote this during a break, during writing a book called Under Western Eyes. So I'd like to read that, see if the themes... I read an essay that asked the question, if Legat's the narrator's unconscious, why is he so self-aware? Conrad had said things in his nonfiction about appreciating Eastern meditation practices, and that makes sense to me because I see yin-yang symbolism here, and a lot of like Eastern ideas about balance and so on. And this essay I read on JSTOR, which was the big essay I read to accompany this reading. The essay was called The Perfect Communion, The Significance of the Body in the Secret Sharer, Yoko Okuda. It's published in 2017, Atomic University. It says this embodies a body first, mind second, Asian type of thinking. And I think it has a balance of light and dark too, the two swirling around each other with spots of light and dark apiece. But yeah, I had noticed head as a symbolism. In fact, it's really interesting. As the boat is journeying toward land, it's journeying toward a place name that has head in its name. It's Jakarta Head, maybe. I really like the beginning of this because it is first person. It's right away he has the word my, but it's like this total like establishing shot of a movie. It's just looking at everything. Here's what's here, and I made this grid mark here to remind me that it's like every square piece of the field of vision is described. Reminded me of Annie Dillard doing something similar out her windows in the book Holy the Firm, which is a really amazing book that I once read over and over a year or two. Got a lot out of that one. Learned a ton. I'm telling you folks, it's a writing school. If you ever want to just take reading to the next level and really know a work, it's pretty exciting. Just read it over and over and over again. Once a month for a year is a great idea. It can be something else. Like I know someone that I heard talking online that said like put ice cubes in the cat's water. My person was marveling at it because the AC doesn't get fixed till tomorrow. But like I know someone who reads 1 page of Tolkien every day. That's cool. That's your favorite writer. You're gonna learn a ton. That guy was a very conscientious, thorough writer, right? With a literary flair. Yeah, you can kind of start to see the cracks, the bells and whistles of a piece sometimes. I got to know Rick Bass's short story, The Hermit Story, so well that sometimes I thought, I bet I've spent more time with this than the writer did. Funny thought. Like I had read it so many times and retyped it and analyzed it from every direction and thought about it. Wrote an essay rooted in it that involved reading it over and over again to really know it. With that one, I started to notice things like the number of paragraphs. Does that signify anything? The number actually does seem to connect to other themes. Maybe. But I don't know that you ever can really know a work completely because the unconscious mind puts so much into it and culture puts so much into it. You think that every work that's ever been written, everything that's ever existed led up to it, it's a lot. And that everything that's ever happened since surrounds it in context now. I added to my notes on the heads. At the end, the head meets a hat. Oh yeah, I think that's so funny. He's turning the boat around after letting the guy escape at his double escape into the jungle. He had to get as close as he could to the land so the guy could make it. Only the double's hat washing off in the water, Legat's hat, previously the captain's hat, gives him something to see on the water. He had said, if only there was something there, like a floating piece of paper. So in this hat, I think that paper thing means something too. The head meets the hat. So like when the captain first sees Legat on the overside of the under there, he's like that scene in the movie It Follows, which I don't love, but it's a really striking scene where you see people in this above ground pool and you only see below their heads and everything's reflected strangely. The captain sees this figure. The captain is on deck just thinking, just being the head, and suddenly there's the body and it's like this self is united. The secret self maybe is not so much this other self, but like the new self that's formed by the two of them together. Also got a funny idea for something I want to write based on this. I want to just excerpt all the insults about this first mate that's on the ship and make it into like a little bit of flash fiction and submit it with a different title to a literary journal, saying clearly what it is. Kind of in the style of excerpt writers like Rob Fitterman, who wrote The Sun Also Rises, which is just all the sentences from The Sun Also Rises that start with the letter I, the word I. So funny. I went to the store. I went fishing. I walked to you. Kind of turning the text into an I, Me, Mine by George Harrison type of song about the text. Yeah, so I really liked the thoughts on the body in this essay by Yoko Okuda from 2017. However, they're not exactly my thoughts on the body. I feel like you can't detach the discussion of the body from a discussion of the head. There's a lot going on here. I mean, starting with that opener, I mean, he just describes everything. Conrad himself had been a captain on such a boat several, sometime before. It was in the early 1890s, I think. I could be wrong about that. Next reading, I will probably know that detail more soundly. Because one essay I read and talked about in a previous video was all about what came from history, what came from his own mind, what came from this historical incident on board the ship the Cutty Sark. What was beamed directly into Conrad's mind via Prismo in the future. Yeah, that's kind of like Prismo in Adventure Time, actually. But I did like his insight, or her, I don't know, this person's insight, this embodying a more felt sort of intelligence. On a previous reading, I wrote that this is a book about journeying into health, and it's written later. And then Heart of Darkness was of a similar story aboard a boat on waterways in an exotic place. But in Heart of Darkness, it's towards sickness. Maybe that's a real mark of maturity, that he reoriented himself in some way toward health instead of toward sickness. I think Conrad did struggle with his health. I'm going to read more about him. But I don't know, this opening is just so interesting. For one thing, it's a giant Dostoevskian block. No indenting on that first page. Wow, that's a move. Get away with that sort of thing back in the day where people were prioritizing space on magazine pages. But it's a cool way to start it. It's like having a really organic establishing shot. It's the field of vision of the narrator, completely described. Something I marked in a previous read, but a swarm of stars. For those of you that haven't watched any of my other 3 videos on The Secret Sharer, also one on Heart of Darkness, I think his descriptions of this chief mate, this who's always saying, well, bless my soul, things like that, are so funny. Kind of Dickensian in a way. He has such a great pair of images here, and it's very subtle, actually. In the second one, I mentioned that there had been a scorpion in an ink bottle at the beginning here. And then at the end, after the double has swam away, that same first mate is cleaning an empty cruet, giving a rub up to a plated cruet stand. Last thing before going to bed. And I looked up a cruet, and it's like, yeah, it's not incomparable to an inkwell in its shape. So it's like, now there's a scorpion in it at the beginning, and then there's not. A dead scorpion, does that mean anything? Does the double symbolize his deathly side? That's from a previous reading. Tea was changed to coal. The Cutty Sark was a tea ship. The Sephora is a coal ship. That's some graduate student's dissertation right there. Just, you can have it. Take it. Just look at that one question. I feel like he's repeating a common phrase here probably, but I like it a lot. Exactitude in some small matters is the very soul of discipline. I like that a lot. I'd like to have that framed, and then next to it, a foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds from Emerson. And I'll nod at both at different times. And probably at another one that said, everything in moderation, even moderation. The scene where he sees the guy next to the boat is freaky. Then it's kind of funny, too. It's like a Woodhouseian scene suddenly. I say, no need to call anyone. I was not going to, I said. Are you alone on deck? Yes. Having the water be phosphorescent. I mean, that shows that he's thinking in a cinematic way. Authors, I'm sure, weren't thinking of the movies in the same way. There's a famous quote by Conrad where he said, he kind of goes on for a couple sentences about how to make everyone see what I see and, feel what I feel, to share, to make you see all this is real, blah, blah, blah. That's an exact quote. I think this is interesting, too. They're both Conway boys, and this is not This is not from Conrad's own life. He was Polish, that taught himself to write in English, isn't that right? Became English. Conway, look, if you look at the linguistics of it, Conway is from kin, meaning chief, and gui, meaning water, so like big water, basically. Just like they're out on this ocean setting at the Gulf of Thailand in this story. It's like these two beings have always been on the water in some way together. That they're from the same town is really interesting. That's a lot to think about. I'm going to think about that more when I read it next time. You know, if you read a book like there's truth here, you'll find it. And I think it's not just, you know, out of deciding that. Because I think this sort of project would be much harder to do with a worse written book. The fact is, there's a lot here. I do think quality is subjective somewhat, but I feel like I could cultivate an appreciation for just about anything in some way, but that's because everything has so many contexts. But good writing is definitely a real thing. When you encounter it, you know it. And Conrad really was a pleasant surprise because I'd never really read him before. I had watched Apocalypse Now and more than once, of course, and the documentary about it. A shadowy dark head like mine seemed to nod imperceptibly above the ghostly gray of my sleeping suit. It was in the night as though I had been faced by my own reflection in the depths of a somber and immense mirror. Yeah, black, white, and gray are key words in this. There it is. When we cited Java head, so literally they're heading toward the head. That's crazy. But also this is the double telling the story, so it's like, that's interesting. Oh, he's the body, that's why. The body side of the head. Huh. Yeah, I don't understand this line unless the double is also possibly has dark skin. Is of African descent, maybe? I've heard that's what the brand of Cain is, right? That's an old, like, racist term or something? Maybe it means something else, too. She would have been only too glad to have me out of the ship in any way. The brand of Cain business, don't you see? It's all right. I was ready to go off, wandering on the face of the earth. And that was price enough to pay for an Abel of that sort. Whoa. Paperback Projects already had 2 books with Abel as the main character. This House of Dawn and the one I literally just read, Green Mansions. Yeah, this is, when I think more about the ship, I'm going to think more about this. He thinks of pinning the curtains together. What does the ship symbolize? It's part of the head, kind of. No, maybe not. I don't know. It's like he thinks about keeping the inner world of the double separate from the outer world. But then it says, like, I'll do it later. I heard the crew washing decks above me. Reading that line for the 4th time, I thought, that would have been such a familiar sound to somebody that had lived this life, you know, in the 1890s. And I was like, what would that have been? Mops, buckets, you know, water splashing. In Conrad's experience, he might have been like, I don't even need to tell it to people of my time, you know. But also, that's just good economical writing. He doesn't need to say it. It would involve mops and brooms and rags and buckets. Things being, you know, scrubbed and probably a couple of people talking. I thought this was a good example of free indirect discourse. Here we have our narrator, even though, no, that's a first-person narrator, but he takes on the character of the person he's talking about. He had terrible weather on the passage out. Terrible, terrible. Wife aboard, too. This is such a funny scene where the captain of the boat, where the guy that he is his double had killed somebody, justifiably in the story, had come from and who he's hiding from. And so our narrator, who's nameless, just shows this other captain everything in the boat, and the guy's like freaked out. He didn't finish and went out brusquely as if to escape from some unrighteous wiles of mine. My polite insistence must have had something menacing in it because he gave it something. And I did not let him off a single item. Mate's room, pantry, storerooms. I'd like to write like a comedy screenplay of this. I think you wouldn't have to change all that much. Just write it for like John C. Reilly and Will Ferrell, maybe. I think that would be hilarious. Age up the characters a little. I mean, or whoever. You have to find young people. It's just, I don't know. There's a lot of humor in it. I think you could make it like a dramedy. People don't play with tone enough. Hollywood movies do. It would never do for me to come to life again. Something that a ghost might have said. This passage seems like really alone in the whole thing. It's kind of interesting where he thinks like, was I just being a coward by not turning him away then like a good captain should have? What am I doing? Why am I
nurturing this side of myself, this person. But then also it is a distinct person. This is not just a metaphor. So it's like a story that exists on a lot of levels. But you can go deep with it. You can go metaphysical. You can go... I find it so funny that the new movie made it like a erotic romance, 2014. That could potentially kill a lot of the double imagery and theme. I don't know. It could work. Looks like beautifully shot from what I've seen. Points to them for liking a cool old story. Maybe because it's public domain, they get the name recognition. Maybe people actually like it. Not so much the name recognition of... Part really hit me this time. The night, clear and starry, sparkled darkly, and the opaque, lightless patches shifting slowly against the low stars with the drifting islets. On the port bow there was a big one, more distant and shadowily imposing by the great space of sky it eclipsed. I also think this lighting the spirit lamp thing is key here. Wild because he has to get so close to the shore, and he's going to totally... his whole crew's like, he's nuts. Why are we doing this? You can't go this close to shore. He's like, I can't find the landward winds if I don't get close to the land. I do think it's so funny, though, that, like, yeah, as much as the captain and the ship represent a head, a little hat gets put on it at the very end. And I watched the hat, the expression of my sudden pity for his mere flesh. It had been meant to save his homeless head from the dangers of the sun, and now, behold, it was saving the ship, serving me for a mark to help out the ignorance of my strangeness. Ha! It was drifting forward, warning me just in time that the ship had gathered sternway. Shift the helm, I said. Twice he compares a towering black mast to the very gateway of Erebus. That to me seems like a failure of variation or something, and it seems un-Conrad-like on some level, though he does the same thing with Heart of Darkness twice. I almost wonder if some editor did that. You gotta really drive it home for these morons, Conrad. JC, can I call you JC? Because is it so important to compare something to the very gateway of Erebus? Maybe. Maybe it says it's the most important metaphor in the whole thing. But apparently this is actually considered a novelette. I found a couple of places online calling it that, but I'm like, I really thought that was a sci-fi thing from the 70s. But it is too long for a short story and too short for a novella, so it's a weird freak. It's great. It's like, I don't think I'm going to hate any of these readings. The Secret Sharer by Joseph Conrad. What I like to do in my life is I like to know the canon. I like to know what's out there. But I'm also always like building my own canon. As everyone does, right? We all have the works that we love. Some things just hit you just right. Recently, my son asked me for 3 books that I thought would really change his life. I'm like, that's such a big assignment. And he said he didn't just want to read like fiction books I love that I thought were quote unquote life-changing. But they kind of are, Brothers Karamazov, that ain't no joke. That'll do something to you, that book. 3 Girls in Brooklyn, come on. I was living for that book for a while. 2666, I was like, whoa. I changed my writing completely for like a year. I did the book Irrational Judgments, but that was nonfiction. So did the Norton Anthology of Postmodern American Poetry. But I'm one of those people that conflates my work with my life, so... Prisma knows if that's a good idea or not, but she won't tell. There's a documentary about Milton Glaser. I want to watch it. 1929 to 2020. Did all these great Shakespeare covers. New book display. I'm loving it. Oh yeah. The cats never went up there, so I thought, okay, you never go up there? I'm using that space. Square hole was fine with it ultimately. I got this from a quote-unquote Little Free Library, which was a shelf with some books on it, with a Little Free Library plaque inside this place called Flock of Moons. It's like a brewery bar now. My writing group met there last night. Most of the books were not in good condition and were not good. But this one was, once I took all the multicolored tabs out of it. Someone who reads very differently from me was reading. This is a time loop story. I love time loop stories. Groundhog Day, Edge of Tomorrow, Palm Springs, Happy Death Day 2. There's that one on a train. It was an alternate reality. That was really cool. There was another really good one too. It was a low budget one I saw on Tubi. There's a few. That's just a fun genre. I love it. I think Edge of Tomorrow is amazing. And apparently the first version of that story was in a Russian novel in like the 1920s. So Groundhog Day, of course, popularized it. These people repeat a 4-day block. Just as they figure out this new life, everything changes because Carter's memories of the time loop are slowly disappearing, and their only chance at happiness is breaking out of the loop forever. I'd like to read a story sometime, or write one maybe, about a community of people that live in time loops, and they're fine with it, and they're using it to like better the world together. They've been in there for decades, and they've like been working on everything. I was thinking of this Soltero lyric, if I had a chance to make things right, I'd only waste it on my life. Imagine a Groundhog Day where it was like about, like solving the bigger problems. What could you do with 24 hours lived over and over and over again? If you break it away from a day, probably more. Groundhog Year, Groundhog Life. It's a sci-fi book called Remix I've wanted to read that's about like a groundhog life, and the guy just keeps waking up on his 18th birthday after he dies. Anyway, something new for the sci-fi fantasy section. This is just one of my favorites. I hope Denis Villeneuve actually makes this into a movie. This has haunted my dreams ever since I read this. But we're talking about The Secret Sharer, and in a second, I'm not going to be talking about anything. I'm going to be driving to see my children. All right, Squirrel, I'm going to miss you. Miss you too, Pris. We'll get the air conditioner working tomorrow, okay? Have any of you ever read and reread a book a whole lot in a structured or just happenstance way, and then you're like, I've read that so many times? I think younger readers do that a lot with their favorite books. But to me, it's like when you start to really get to know a work, I wanted to do this sort of thing on this channel because I didn't want it to just be superficial readings of things that was reading once, A lot of the Paperback Project is rereads. It's fun to get into the depths. And if you ever want to write yourself, it'll make you a writer. It always gives me like project book related ideas too. Like I have an idea for a script from this I'd like to write. I have an idea for a short piece of excerpted work. I really just admire this story a lot now too. I'm like, dang, this is a good story. Conrad, you're awesome, man. I hate that if I ever be a Conrad completist, I'll have to read a book called The N-Word of the Narcissist. I'm like, dude, why'd you have to title a book that? I was watching this Muslim comedian and it was so funny. She's all, the slur for us is sand N-words. I can't even say my own slur. That's not a good slur. Yeah, I think maybe some people are uneasy with Conrad sometimes in modern times because he was, part of a really colonist time. What are you doing in these jungles, man? Heart of Darkness in Africa, Secret Sharer in the Gulf of Thailand. What's the other one? I read part of Nostromo for the Paperback Project, which was set in South America. Maybe Central America? Anyway, I washed a backpack with it in it, sadly, and it was destroyed, and so I never finished that one. But that's appropriate, as apparently there was going to be a really famous, huge, big-budget movie about it, and then the director died. Nostromo was F. Scott Fitzgerald's favorite Conrad book. Very interesting. It hadn't quite grabbed me yet by the time it got destroyed, but I thought, there might be something here. Secret Sharer describes the terrible conflict of a young captain who is torn between his duty to the ship and his loyalty to a young officer with whom he identifies himself after the murder of a mutinous crew member. One of these days I'll figure out how to put playlists together on YouTube, and I'll add all of the Secret Sharer books to one playlist, or videos to one playlist. I'd kind of like to hear them all in one spot myself, because I know I learned and read stuff with each reading that didn't stand out this time for whatever reason. Any Conrad fans out there? Conrad freaks? I think the internet would bring you to my door. You'd be searching for your favorite writer on YouTube. When I looked up The Secret Sharer today, one of the top results was one of the cats with a copy of it. That's great. But I want to do that to his legacy, but sure, why not? Question, do I put it back on the paperback shelf? That feels right. Or do I add it to the currently reading section? All right, currently reading. I think putting it on the paperback shelf last time made me skip a month. So this is better. All right, everybody. Well, Secret Sharer. Check it out, Read it at least once with me, if you want. It's only 40 pages or so. Bet you can find the whole text online very easily. I know you can find YouTube videos of it just being read, audiobooks style. I want to listen to one of those one time. Those might be one, maybe that'll be one of my makeup readings. It doesn't feel like it. No, that's fine. Blind people read. Look at the information. Favorite cover ever. And this one. So good. All right, I'm Prismo, and here's my cat, Mike Smith. Something like that. All right, y'all. Take care.